is Maximus Decimus Meridius.
I am your father.
You like Huey Lewis on the news?
Yes. And you're not sure about this, are you?
You're gonna die, clown!
What's the most you ever lost on a coin toss? Sir? The most you ever lost on a coin toss. Call it.
Whose motorcycle is this?
It's a chopper, baby.
Whose chopper is this?
Zed's.
Who's Zed?
Zed's dead, baby.
Bring out today!
This is a tasty burger.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
Welcome to the fucking show.
Hello, welcome back to See What Sticks, a podcast about everything and nothing. I'm Russell.
I'm Ben.
And it's another week, and my hair's long enough that I can wear it in a ponytail now, like Jon Snow. I have my Jon Snow bun rocking for Game of Thrones.
It's all been leading up to this, just for Game of Thrones. There's no other reason for your hair except for Game of Thrones.
You think I'm not cutting it off after the final episode in solidarity? You're damn wrong. Actually, I'm not going to do that. But that would be a really good bit. I've been growing my hair out for the last 8 months for Game of Thrones and just cutting it off at the end.
If Jon Snow dies, it has to go.
Oh.
If he lives, it lives.
Yeah, it lives forever. I'm never going to cut my hair because I don't think they're ever going to do a thing after Game of Thrones because the prequel is a prequel. So Jon Snow will not have been born yet.
Yeah. Kit Harington will be happy to get rid of that hair.
Oh my god. That was part of his contract. He couldn't cut his hair. As I would be so pissed. Like, I like growing my hair out, but if someone told me I couldn't cut my hair, I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that would actually make me upset if someone told me I couldn't.
Though, this is all in an imaginary world where I have hair on my head. But if someone were paying me Game of Thrones money, like what Kit Harington makes, then I think I would be okay with someone having control over my hair temporarily.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess, yeah. If someone was just going to be like, here's a check, and we're going to put a 9, and we're going to write zeros until you say you're not going to cut your hair. I'm like, okay. You could give me, $900. I'm like, that's fine. That's way more money than I have now. And I'm fine with that. I don't need to. I'll let this shit grow out. I'll look gorgeous with long hair. I'll look like Fabio. But yeah, so Ben, this week has been a little slow on the movie news.
It has. I think the industry's preparing for Star Wars convention that's going on this weekend, correct?
Yeah, it's this weekend in Chicago, and I'm getting the hell out of Chicago this weekend.
Save yourself.
Yeah, I live close enough to downtown in the city to be yeah, I'm not going to be around for this. This is going to be madness. But I mean, good for you if you're a Star Wars fan. Not like you, but good for you if you're a Star Wars fan. This will go into a topic later. What's your opinion of the Star Wars movies since Disney has acquired the rights to Lucasfilm?
So that would be basically from
Force Awakens
on, right? Mm-hmm. I think they've been quality films. I actually still have not seen Solo. I need to get on that. It's on damn Netflix. I've just been going through Game of Thrones, trying to get caught up, and then we have our own personal work that we're working on.
Yeah.
But I think they've been quality films. I really, I liked The Force Awakens as much as people, or I guess as the insufferable portion of the fan base says, it was just, A New Hope, all over again. I absolutely loved Rogue One and The Last Jedi. I thought those were freaking amazing movies.
Rogue One is my favorite thing that they have done with Star Wars besides Empire Strikes Back. I love Rogue One.
It's very good.
Rogue One is probably my second favorite Star Wars movie of all time, and that's a lot of people who are huge Star Wars fans are going to be like, what? I just love it. I also love that they kill off all the characters. I'm a big fan for getting attached to a character and then the creators being like, yeah, we're going to kill him now. And you're being like, whoa.
I mean, the writers were smart enough to realize and to take that, I guess, risk and think, and for like a family friendly franchise like Star Wars is, and saying like, if these people are really on a mission to get like the Death Star plans, there really is a suicide mission.
Oh yeah.
They're not going to like sugarcoat and make some like sort of convenient reason that most of those crew members get out alive. Like, no,
yeah,
they're gone,
and
it made it more noble. It made it like that much more important within the overall canon and story that like these people sacrificed their lives so that the galaxy was going to survive.
Yeah, and I think that story is super cool, and I love the I know some people hate on it. The CGI for Tarkin to bring Peter Cushing back for that role is so cool. Even if it's not 100, it's like 98%. It is so good. And the Princess Leia de-aging CGI thing they did for that one moment at the end, it's so good. And the Darth Vader scene, I know that scene's only like 62 seconds long or whatever. That Darth Vader scene is the coolest Darth Vader moment in all of Star Wars.
Yeah, it was the reminder, like, hey, you guys remember Star Wars, or you guys remember when Darth Vader was like the baddest motherfucker in cinematic history?
Yeah.
Like, here's your quick reminder, guys, so you don't forget.
Exactly, and it's gonna be so good. But yeah, come on, let's do it. The new movie, does it have a title or anything? I think they'll probably announce it at the thing.
They have to. It's like, if they don't,
people are going to lose their minds.
The world of Star Wars fans will erupt.
Do you think this movie? So you know how the prequels end on a real shit note. The prequels end where they're like, oh yeah, everything is fucked. But then the original trilogy ends with like, the universe is cool now because we saved the day. Do you think this trilogy of films is going to end on a bad note or on a good note?
It's hard to say. I don't know, because I guess we will, when we do see the ending, we will kind of know the direction that Disney wants to go in the future with the franchise. Like, if they ended on a happy little bow tied on the top note, then, obviously they're going to keep making more because money, and Disney needs all that cash. But like you could, I guess, make the argument that if they do put it on like a sour kind of note, or like more of like, not everything is great, but there's still conflict within the galaxy, then we kind of know, like, are these characters going to like go on within the franchise? Are they going to just kind of introduce a whole another part of this thing again? It's really, we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think you're probably right. I think they're going to end it like in a kind of note. Like, I think they're going to give Carrie Fisher's character of Leia a send-off. I think they'll probably give Chewie a send-off, unless they're going to keep Chewie around. But I think the new characters like John Boyega's character and like Poe, Dameron, Finn, Rey, and Kylo, I think they're going to keep them all around, and maybe I think it'd be cool if they did a Frozen in Carbonite ending for one of those characters and left that for like 15 years. I think that'd be super cool.
If that was the case, I think that would probably either be Finn or Poe.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, I can kind of see Poe biting the dust in the third one.
I could too, and I think
like a raising the stakes kind of thing.
Especially because he is definitely a fan favorite. He really has become such a like. He's like what Han Solo was, but more complex, if that makes sense. Because he's like, you realize like, wait, especially in The Last Jedi, you're like, wait, this guy's wrong. Like, he's kind of a hothead, but he's also totally wrong about his like ideas. And I think that makes that character more intriguing because like Han Solo was always kind of right, and Poe is like, no, dude, you totally fucked this up. And
right, he had the best of intentions, but his brashness kind of got in the way of a more level-headed look at things.
And that's why I love The Last Jedi so much, because like it didn't do the Star Wars thing. It did something completely different, and it was like, okay, here's like the things that you think your character is going to do. Like you think your Luke Skywalker is going to be like this, you think Poe's going to be like this, but they're not. And then someone flies a ship through light speed through another ship, which is the coolest scene in any Star Wars film. That like 8 seconds is like, whoa, why didn't anyone think of that before? Like, let's just use this ship as a missile. Like, let's kamikaze a ship through another ship. I love it.
Yeah, it was wild.
But sorry if you guys heard that. I was drinking a protein shake. I just got back from the gym, and I'm an asshole, and I need my protein.
I think just saying that, I think that sentence alone qualified you as an asshole.
I'm sorry, I was thirsty and I needed one, and yeah, oops. But yes, I did. That's what I was drinking. If you guys heard that, it's not gone, so you'll hear more of that. But yeah, so movie news. Apart from what we're about to get next week with a billion different Star Wars things, apparently a bunch of different basketball players have turned down LeBron James and his offer to be in the new Space Jam movie.
Really? I hadn't heard about this.
Yeah, which I find to be really weird. This is on Barstool Sports, their movie page. And you know what? I don't get why. Like, if you, say you're like Steph Curry or someone like that, and why wouldn't you want to be in it? If anything, like, you're going to get a more family-friendly appeal. You're going to get, like, your name and your brand, so to speak, out there. You're going to be in a movie that's either going to be okay to good, and you're going to be kind of, like, I don't want to say immortalized in it, but, like, it's Space Jam. Like, people are going to use it. If worse comes to worse, it's going to be, like, a meme. But not in a bad way either. So I think, like, why wouldn't you? But that's just me looking at it from a film standpoint, not, like, an athlete standpoint. And I think maybe in the NBA they just look at it a little differently.
Did the article have any sort of explanation from the players that turned it down? Like, why?
All it says is just, like, a list of players have turned down LeBron James for Space Jam 2 offer. That's all it said. So...
Odd.
That is odd. And then the other big piece of news, besides Shazam getting crazy good ratings, it has a 91 on Rotten Tomatoes, and it stayed there, and it's actually going up. So the other Captain Marvel movie is really good.
I enjoyed Shazam more, actually, than Captain Marvel.
I have not seen Shazam. I'm planning on seeing it this weekend. Right before I watch Game of Thrones, there's a showing of it that literally ends 45 minutes before Game of Thrones starts. So I'm going to go from Shazam back home, switch my mindset, watch GOT.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Shazam. I'll leave our full conversation about that until after you see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was surprising. It was very good, very heartfelt. I loved it.
I've heard this is just something I heard because I actually have not gone through spoilers for this because I actually love the character of Shazam. I'm actually a comic book fan character of this. I heard there is a secondary set of villains who I think I know who they are. Because there's a villain in the trailer who isn't the main villain, is what I've heard.
He is the main villain.
Oh, he is? But there's just a
different that secondary set of villains is kind of like part of his whole villain.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm excited because I think I know who it is, but I don't want to say much on the podcast. But I think I have a very good idea because I've read the new 52 run of Captain Marvel, and people said it's legitimately shot for shot the new 52 run. And if it is, I'm so stoked. I'll talk to you about it after the show.
Okay.
And then the big piece of news is we have a more fleshed out Lion King trailer where we hear voices and we see more of the CGI in action. And spoiler alert, it looks incredible.
Yeah, I thought that this more in-depth teaser, I thought it did more justice to the CGI that Jon Favreau is working with. I think it's evolved even more so than from like the Jungle Book.
Oh yeah.
It looks really good, and there's a part in this new trailer where Hans Zimmer's original score drops.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, that was like I didn't expect to get the chills that I got.
Yeah, I have watched this trailer a bunch of times today because it's only like 2 minutes long. But I probably watched it like 8 or 9 times, and there's so many good shots that are side by side that they have like really tried to replicate. And when this first came out, I was like, why do we need this? But I think this movie, in a lot of ways, it's for people who grew up with this, like you and I, but it's also for like people who are your kids' age. So they have their own version of the Lion King they get to grow up with.
Right. It'll be a good way for parents and children to kind of connect in a way like, hey, you like this? Like, hey, let me show you our version of it.
Yeah.
And hopefully my kids aren't like stuck up enough to be like, what is this hand drawing cartoon shit? Like, I don't want CGI.
Just be like, this is where this came from. Like, you got to know your past to appreciate the present.
You ungrateful little shits.
Yeah, the one I'm super stoked for that I've said since the beginning is Mulan. That's the one I'm waiting for because Mulan is my favorite like Disney like princess, I guess, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And my favorite, I mean, I love the Jungle Book, especially when I was a kid. I loved the Jungle Book. And I love Lion King and Tarzan and stuff. I do. Like, I'm not going to hate on those. But Mulan is the one for me that was, like, the standout. If I had to pick one, it's Mulan.
Yeah, it's got a good... I think it's got one of the better messages behind a lot of the princess movies. Saying, like, hey, you can do everything that, the boys' club...
Oh yeah,
can do, and they're trying to get you not to do.
Yeah, and you can do that, and you probably can be better than them and think outside the box and save the day, which is like really cool. And like, if you go back, that movie was on TV. I don't know if it was on TV or just like people were watching on TV, but I watched the end with the Huns and just the entire like probably last 30 minutes of that movie. Oh my god, it's so good. Like, I did not remember how good that animation was and everything. And Eddie Murphy as Mushu, so good. We talked about this in the past, who they would recast as Mushu. Hannibal Buress. I want to have a Hannibal Buress Mushu.
He would be very good. Let's see. Hannibal Buress, maybe... Keegan-Michael Key.
Oh, yeah.
I think would be pretty good for that.
Even Noah, what's his face? He took over Stephen Colbert. Trevor Noah.
Trevor Noah, okay.
He'd be good. I'm just trying to think of a few. You know who else would potentially be good, but I don't know if in not that role exactly? Aziz Ansari would be good at some of this because he has a very unique voice.
He does.
And
he'd be very. He would do good with some voice work, but yeah, with him, it's more like, is the public ready to have him back yet? With his sort of like
I know
thing, it's all I don't know.
Is that why they're not doing a Master of None season 3 yet?
I don't know. That might be a particularly big reason, but I have not kept up with that.
Yeah.
And him in particular.
Yeah, because I know he's on tour again.
Yeah, and I did read a little bit of snippet saying like he does have a portion of his new act where he does kind of reflect upon some of his stuff. Whether it's successful in like his self-reflection and kind of moving forward. Yeah. I'm not sure. I haven't read that part yet. But, I mean, at least it's something that he is trying, I guess.
Yeah, I think especially with him, like, he used to be definitely one of my favorite comedians. I mean, my favorite comedians right now, for anyone who's wondering, are John Mulaney and Tom Segura are my two favorite comedians right now. I also love Michael Shea, but he doesn't do as much stand-up. But Aziz used to be, and then I realized he's kind of has this, like, really shitty side. And then I'm like, man, like, it's like, why do you gotta... you can't take Aziz from us. Like, it's like someone you like have so much like respect and talent, like with all this talent, and then you're like, dude, why do you have to be an asshole? Like it's so easy to not be an asshole. It's just so easy.
Yeah, that's my feelings with Louis C.K. I was such a huge fan of his, and then he took that complete heel turn, and it's just like, all right, man, I just gotta separate myself from everything about you now. And you know what? I've come to realize, like, you know, my life has not really changed for the worse by doing that.
Yeah, it's
just like, you know what? That's the way it is. If this guy wants to, you know, not apologize for his actions, I guess, or not like really sincerely try to act like he's sorry for it.
Yeah.
This is a whole thing that we could go on and on about, but
yeah,
we'll leave shitty people in the shit.
Yeah, honestly, and yeah, it's a bummer and a half. It really, really is. But I think it's a bummer for the better that we know about this and that we're aware of this. So then, like, hopefully future creators and performers and everybody don't do this, or we like hold people accountable, and that's good. That's important. Yeah. But yeah, so I think those are the big pieces of news. Also, people are freaking out over the trailer for Endgame. Apparently, the Russo brothers have come out and officially said a lot of what you're seeing in the trailers is not in the movies, or it's not exactly what you think, which is them saying we've digitally edited the trailer to throw you off.
I haven't even watched the latest Endgame trailer because I've cut myself off. I'm like, okay, I saw the initial teaser. I know I'm going to see this movie anyway, so let's go into this pretty fresh. Mm-hmm. And I gotta say, the past few big movies that I've gone to see in theaters, I've taken this approach with, and it's enhanced my viewing experience.
Yeah, I watched a piece of the last trailer because it was on Instagram. It was one of those like little 10-second clips, and it was just Tony Stark and Steve Rogers shaking hands. It was just that, and then it was like things that you didn't know, and then I'm like, I'm not going to click on this because I don't want to know anymore. I don't want any potential spoilers, and usually I don't mind spoilers, but for this, I care. And for Game of Thrones, I care. But Star Wars, if someone like came out on Reddit and was like, this is legitimately the script, I'd probably read it.
Yeah, really, like Disney and Marvel could take the approach that HBO has taken with Game of Thrones. Like, Game of Thrones really hasn't released much of anything as far as like new content, new clips of the season. I mean, very, very little, because they know, like, we don't need to spend marketing budget on like a bunch of new trailers. Like, you people are going to come watch, and we know this. So
yeah, we have you already. So it doesn't, I mean, it matters. And I mean, for the 4 people out there who are not going to see this movie, that's fine. Like, they don't want those people there anyway, I don't think. Like, if you're not on board already, like, fine, but it's not like they're already going to make $1 trillion off this movie, so it's not like they're like worried like, oh, do we need to market to this audience? They know exactly what they're doing at this point, and especially with Marvel, there's enough good faith behind this that you're right, they don't need to spend more money doing something that they don't need to do anymore.
Yeah.
Because no one is going to be like, wait, what's the MCU? Like, no one who's in any sort of market is going to say that anymore.
Yeah. And that kind of leads us into one of our topics for tonight.
Yes.
As far as comic book movies, and are we starting to feel is there any evidence, or are we starting to feel any sort of fatigue towards comic books in the film industry?
Yeah, so, here's the first thing. Are we starting to feel fatigue? The box office numbers say no. But I think when you listen to podcasts and when you listen to people, the answer is probably. I mean, there's been officially, with the new Endgame coming out, 22 films. With Endgame, before 21. That's a lot of movies over the course of 10 years. I remember seeing Iron Man, the first one, with Robert Downey Jr., which, that was a dumb sentence. But I remember that. It was fantastic. And I was like, whoa. They're like doing like the Dark Knight approach to Iron Man. And then they did Thor, and then they did Hulk, and then Thor, and you know the rest. But I think before that, comic book movies weren't taken as seriously. Even if you're going back to the old Superman, you're going to Batman 89, you're going to all those. People are like, oh yeah, they're kind of hokey and campy. And I mean, the Marvel movies are, and then the DC movies, and then the Dark Knight were like, you know what, let's just do a cop movie with Batman.
Right, and yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like you said, I think that a lot of people, when Iron Man came out, didn't realize how in depth that Marvel was going to go with this universe cinematically. So they did kind of still treat it like the 80s Superman, the 89 Batman, and even like some of the minor stuff coming through the 90s. It wasn't until probably I would say maybe Captain America: The First Avenger, where you could see like the connections between what had come out already and be like, okay, we got something different here. Yeah. And it's something that's special. It's something that a lot of care is going into.
Most definitely. And I think like with the addition of like the villain in that, which is the Red Skull, which for those of you who may not have seen that movie, is just a Nazi. The villain is the Nazis. And I mean, that's good because the Nazis are bad group of people. That's not a hot take. That's pretty standard. That's middle of the road. But yeah, I think that movie really did kind of legitimize the MCU, and people are like, oh, damn, okay, like we're doing this. And yeah, I think after that we were kind of all in for the Avengers, and then I think people started to feel fatigue around Age of Ultron.
I think it didn't help that Age of Ultron, looking back, isn't really the greatest MCU film.
No.
It's kind of a mess.
Oh, it's definitely a mess, and it's clearly a stepping stone for other things. Like, it was marketed as like, this is the thing. And it kind of turned out to be another thing, not the thing. And yeah, I don't know. I remember seeing that movie when I was at Purdue in the movie theater that's right by campus with a bunch of other people, and I left and I was like, what was that? And like that's all I remember thinking at the end was like, what the hell did I just watch? And I don't know if that's a good thought to have.
Yeah, I mean, there was some very important things that happened in the film. Like, obviously, we got Vision out of it, and he was a big part moving forward. But really, yeah, it was kind of like you said, that stepping stone in between phase. What was that? Phase 2.
Yeah.
Phase 2 and moving forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was kind of like a lot going on, but at the same time, what's really happening with all of this shit that's going on? Mm-hmm. So,
and yeah. And I mean, Vision always reminds me. I know this is an unfair comparison of Miles from Frasier. I don't know. He just always reminds me of that, and I just think of Robot Miles. But yeah, I think with this happening with Endgame and being number 22, I think people are going to drop off after this one. But the success of the DC universe and what we talked about last week with Joker, I think the attention is going to shift from the MCU to the DCEU. This isn't like me talking smack, but I think that's where the shift is going to go, because I think people are going to be like, oh, these Marvel movies are kind of samey unless they do something big. And DC is just like, let's just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. We said the name of the thing.
I think best case scenario is that happens, best case scenario is Marvel still retains its luster and its hold, or it gives up a portion of its hold on box office success in the industry and lets DCU develop with it. So they're both like kind of considered, or they're both seen equally as good as far as comic book movies. I think that's best case scenario. Whether that happens or not, who knows? Because Warner Brothers does not have a track record, a good one, with consistency in their movies.
Yeah, and as we know, Mickey Mouse is essentially turning into Scrooge McDuck and diving into a vat full of money. So, as much as I'd like to think that Disney's going to be like, you know what, you guys have a shot, that's not happening. Disney's like, no, we have a stranglehold, and we're going to just tighten it so much. But I think after the Joker comes out and after the success of Shazam, Disney's going to be like, oh shit, we got to do something.
And that something is buy DC.
Yeah.
Marvel's going to buy DC.
And they're just like looking at like Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers is just like doing this, like getting ready for a fight. And they're like, Warner Brothers is not going to give up Warner Brothers.
Oh, absolutely not.
They
it
will.
It would take trillions of dollars.
Yeah. But yeah, I think in general there is fatigue, but let's hope that we continue getting stuff and these don't go the way of the Western and turn into a caricature of themselves.
Let's hope not.
But yeah, so what? Oh yeah, Game of Thrones. That's what we're talking about. Ben, how the hell are we going to do this? So we talked about seasons 1 and 2 in extreme detail. One could have said we have a encyclopedic knowledge of Game of Thrones. One could say we are the ultimate go-to experts on everything Westeros and Game of Thrones. That when people talk about this podcast, like Time Magazine has said, experts on Game of Thrones. Ben, we have to.
I think people could just go back and listen to us bullshit.
Oh yeah.
Our extremely limited knowledge of what happened outside of our memories and call you on that bullshit right now.
Oh, 100%. And especially you went back and watched them. I went on Wikipedia and I'm like, oh yeah, I watched these like 3 years ago and I read the books. I owe you a drink. And I'm like, okay, you're like, oh yeah, and then this character, I'm like, oh shit, I forgot they existed. Oh no. So we have to talk about 5 seasons of Game of Thrones, in roughly 30 minutes. For those of you who haven't watched Game of Thrones and are trying to watch season 8, here's what I would recommend right now. This is my recommendation to you, listener, who wants to get in on the Game of Thrones hype train that is happening everywhere. Just go watch season 8 with your friends. Go to a bar, watch it. Go to like the watching parties, and then you won't know what the fuck is happening. That's fine. Listen to us at See What Sticks. We'll tell you it's fine that you don't know what's happening. And then go back and watch seasons 1 through 7. And then you'll be like, oh, that all makes sense. Because you don't want to miss out on the hype. You definitely don't. But then no one's going to be like, oh, you have to watch 80 hours of television in 5 days. Which, I mean, if you have the means to watch 80 hours of television in 5 days, I wish I was you.
Right. You probably have some sort of, financial egg's nest that you're sitting on that allows you to do this.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
rest of us don't.
Yeah, I feel like it's Jeff Bezos is just like, hey guys, I have to call off work this week. They're like, oh no, what happened? Oh, nothing. I'm sick. I have a cold. And he's just like sitting in his giant mansion with his 10,000-foot TV. And he's like, episode 1 of Game of Thrones, start. And he's like, da na 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 na. And then Sunday night, he's gonna be like sleep deprived. He's like, I'm so ready to watch Game of Thrones. But yeah, how do we break down 5 seasons? Here's my idea. Let's go through specific characters and talk about their arcs. And like the characters that are still alive. So let's do like Jon, Daenerys, like Sansa, Arya, like Davos, and a few of the others, and just talk about what happened from season 2 until now, and like Jaime and Cersei. And then through breaking down each character's specific arc, we will have talked about pretty much everything. I think that's probably the best way to approach this.
Yeah, hopefully we will have covered what people need to know when doing that.
Yeah. Let's do a quick breakdown, and then you can start. Game of Thrones takes place in Westeros and Essos. Westeros is the main continent. It's essentially England and Ireland. There's a wall. It separates the north from the south. The wall's made out of ice. There's White Walkers and Wildlings up there. The Wildlings we think are bad. They're probably not. The White Walkers are probably bad. They might not be. But the real villain are people. Okay, that's Game of Thrones. Who do you want to start with?
Probably I'll start with our most important person up to this point, Jon Snow.
Yeah. So Jon Snow is a bastard. That's why his last name is Snow, not Stark. Or is it? Sorry. So yeah, let's talk Jon Snow. So he's up at the wall. Go for it.
Yes. So Jon Snow at the wall. He's dealing with kind of his nobility in a way, and being a member of the Night's Watch. He gets put as what's the term that they use? A steward for the then current
Lord Commander
of the Night's Watch. That's right. Something or other Mormont. Jorah Mormont's father.
It's Jor. It's like Jor or Jar. It's like Jorah Mormont, and then Jorah is his son.
Okay. So Jon Snow, he's at the Night's Watch. He has some interactions with some wildlings and learns about kind of the danger of the White Walkers, and that them coming is a pretty big deal. And he, for a lot of his time at least in seasons 3 and 4, and 5, he's pretty much just trying to convince people like, hey, these MFers are coming. We need to kind of not play by the rules anymore, which is hate the wildlings north of the wall because they're wildlings and no other reason. I think his exact, or paraphrasing his line, is like, the only reason they're different from us is because they were born on the wrong side of the wall.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go for it. I was just going to say a thing, but continue.
But yeah, so season, I think it's season 3. Yeah. Is it season 3 where the battle at the wall?
That's in season 3 or 4. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We've gone off the books.
Yeah, basically, yeah. John gets to the point where he becomes Lord Commander of the Night's Watch because he's voted into it. People think he's the best leader for the position. He decides that instead of fighting the wildlings, they need to allow them to come south of the wall, just for the sheer fact that they don't continue to give numbers to the rising White Walker army. No, pretty much nobody at the wall likes that except for his closest friends because they just trust him. And even then, they're kind of like, we'll just go with you because, we trust you and you're our friend. Big battle at Hardhome happens. Pretty much everybody realizes that, John's not quite full of shit. He gets a group of wildlings across the wall. The people at the Night's Watch that didn't like that take some revenge, and they kill Jon Snow.
Yeah.
And that's at the end of season 5. Then in season 6, Jon Snow is resurrected by Melisandre. Because she was there because what's his face? Stannis Baratheon took up home at the Night's Watch because he was moving south towards Winterfell to try and beat the Bolton family out of Winterfell. But yeah, Jon Snow gets resurrected. He's kind of having a crisis or an existential crisis the second time around because he's like, do I deserve to be alive still? Do I deserve to still have this kind of leadership role?
Yeah.
He keeps moving on through his little journey. He eventually meets up with Dany, and they kind of hit it off. Not initially, because I think Dany kind of sees him as maybe a possible threat to what she sees as her rightful position atop the Iron Throne.
Yep.
And I think the last thing we find out, it's not the last thing we find out, but we find out that Jon is in fact the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark, which makes him the technical rightful heir to the
Iron Throne.
Exactly.
And that makes Daenerys Targaryen his aunt, because Rhaegar is her oldest brother, who is like 20 years older than her. And Lyanna is Ned Stark, who Jon thinks is his father. It's his father's sister.
Yes, and we find out that Ned never actually was, like, unfaithful to Catelyn Stark. He basically was just like, I have to keep this secret that my sister and Rhaegar Targaryen had a child. Because,
otherwise, they're going to kill this baby.
Yeah, everyone wants this baby dead.
Yeah. Because they're trying to find and kill all the Targaryens, because Robert Baratheon, as we talked about before, took over the Iron Throne. And he's like, I need to kill all the Targaryens. So there's 2 kids, Dany and Viserys, who are over in Essos doing what we've talked about before, like trying to like amass an army. Those are the last 2 we think are left. In the books, I Owe You a Drink, there's a few other Targaryens running around. But then there's Aemon Targaryen, who's at the wall, who's blind, who's a maester. And that he's not a super important character in the show, but we do learn that he's a Targaryen, and he's a good mentor for Jon. And he's like... And Aemon knows stuff. Like, Aemon clearly knows what's up with a lot of things, and he's like, hey, just remember, like, he's essentially like a Yoda-type character for Jon. He really is. He really does help him. And is like, you're doing the right thing. Sometimes doing the right thing will make people hate you, but don't stop doing the right thing.
Right. And kind of to a lesser extent, yeah, Aemon is a mentor to Sam as well.
Yeah.
Basically, Aemon's like Sam and Jon's one of their only friends and like allies at the wall.
And then I guess we can talk about Sam then. So Samwell Tarly, I'll do Sam. Samwell Tarly is at the wall. He's from House Tarly, who's they're like probably one of the most wealthy houses in Westeros, but they're like kind of like a financially wealthy house. They don't have a lot of hard power, a lot of soft power. Ben did just explode, so we're fine. Ben, how's your cat? We're just gonna put this on hold.
She's knocking shit over left and right.
She's very cute.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's very cute. She looks very like friendly.
She is. She can be a little bit too friendly and not realize that her claws hurt.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Talking about you.
But yeah, so Sam, he's kind of like this outcast up at the wall. He's a little chubby, a little soft, and isn't really cut out for the Night's Watch as like these hardened like soldiers. But Sam is really smart and saves a baby north of the wall from this guy named Craster, and meets a girl named Gilly. And then Sam, at the same time when he's saving this baby, kills a White Walker with something called Dragonglass, which is obsidian, and realizes, holy shit, these White Walker zombie ice monsters can be defeated. So then he manages to get south of the wall. He runs into Jon's brother, Bran, who can see the future and stuff. And we'll talk about Bran, who turns into a tree. So he runs into him. Sam is like on the run. He goes and becomes a maester, or is in training to become a maester, which is like a priest / learned person / professor / author / doctor /
like overall wise man.
Yeah, it's like a wise man. It's like what Gandalf in Lord of the Rings kind of is, except in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is a low-ish level angel, and that's something completely different. We're not getting into that. But he's like a learned person, and every city has a maester, and every like noble house has one, and they're kind of like these wise forces of good. And when Sam is there, he learns a lot about White Walkers and learns like how you can maybe defeat these guys. And then he runs into Jorah Mormont, who's the son of the older Mormont, who is head of the Night's Watch, and is like, oh, I knew your dad. And Jorah's like, yeah, I hated my dad. And he's like, oh shit, I'm sorry. And then Jorah's like, yeah, I've been hanging out with this Daenerys Targaryen person over in Essos. And he's like, oh shit, the dragon person? And they're like, yup. And then Jorah has this thing called grayscale, which is like this, it's kind of like leprosy, except it turns you into a stone. And then Sam is like, wait, I know how to cure you. Sam cures him. Sam is like, hey, this is cool. And then Sam goes back to his home, like, it's not High Garden. where the house Tarly is. And then he's there, and his family's like, "You're a piece of shit, and we hate you." And Sam's like, this is why I didn't want to come back here. And then steals this priceless sword, which is made out of Valyrian steel, which is another thing that can kill White Walkers. And Sam's like, "I'm out of here." And then he's back in Winterfell, and then's like, "Oh yeah, Jon's dead. Now Jon's alive. I'm a good guy. I'm here to hang out with Bran, who is essentially a carrot, who can see the future, and who can control things." And then he's like, "That's wild. So, let's get to Bran."
Right. Last time we saw Bran, he was on his way north, or he's trying to find anybody in his family. I think they were on their way to the Wall because they know that Jon Snow is there, and that's probably like the safest place for him.
Yeah.
They actually escape. Him and his brother Rickon escape with.
Osha.
Sorry, what?
Osha, the wildling?
Yes, Osha, and then two other children, Jojen and Mira, who they just randomly come across them. Well, not really randomly, because Jojen has been getting visions saying, like, you need to find
this
Bran
kid.
Stark.
Yeah.
And you need to get him to the Three-Eyed Raven.
Yeah.
So they're heading their way towards the north. They eventually learn that basically there's really nothing for them at the north. Like, they need to continue beyond the Wall to get to the Three-Eyed Raven. All of season 5, we do not see Bran.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of storytelling that had to focus on other things that were kind of more important at the time.
Yeah.
So when we get back to Bran, this is after we've discovered that he's a warg, which means he can pretty much kind of just put himself into any animal.
Yeah.
And we find out that he can actually do this with humans as well, because he puts himself into Hodor, his caretaker / very large person.
Yeah.
Like protector that's along the way. We find out that he's basically the only person in the world that could warg into another human.
Yeah.
And Jojen tells him that. So they do eventually get to beyond the Wall to see the Three-Eyed Raven.
Whose name is Brendan Rivers, who's actually in I Owe You a Drink in the books, maybe was like part of the Stark family, I guess, but also was part of the Night's Watch. So his story kind of parallels Jon Snow's.
Okay. Yeah, that's a detail that
the show does not do.
Right, they definitely don't touch on that. So basically, as soon as Bran gets to the Three-Eyed Raven, he starts to do his, training, if you will.
Yeah.
With the Three-Eyed Raven to kind of learn, like, who he's supposed to be. I'm still working on... I'm about halfway through Season 5 in my catch-up. Actually, I'm about to be halfway through Season 6, excuse me, in my, catch-up viewing. So, Bran's sort of where we left off with him to this point. I'm still fuzzy on and trying to remember, but basically he's kind of lost all of his sort of connection to being a human at this point, because his mannerisms and his delivery of any dialogue is very robotic, and he's basically lost all human qualities as he's becoming the next Three-Eyed Raven. Yeah,
so Brendan Rivers, the Three-Eyed Raven, is essentially a tree, because these little elf-type people called the Children of the Forest essentially were like, you're really powerful. We're going to merge you with a tree called a weirwood that are like these trees with faces on them. And he's like, now you can see the past, present, and future, and you're essentially all-powerful. And then these Children of the Forest are the ones that create the White Walkers to prevent humans from messing with them, except the White Walkers are like a weapon that went way out of control, and they're like, oh shit, we made you too strong, so now we have to find a way to combat you. So it's let's introduce frogs, now let's introduce snakes to kill the frogs, let's introduce mongooses to kill the snakes, essentially is what is happening in Westeros. Bran is up there turning into a tree and seeing the past, present, and future, and then one time he wargs or mind controls too hard in the past, present, and future, and sees young Hodor. And Hodor's like a stable boy in Winterfell, which is essentially his parents are just probably horse workers or like carpenters, and Hodor's just there hanging out with young Ned Stark and young Lyanna Stark, and he sees his father. He's like, whoa. And then at the same time, he works back and sees the Night King, who's like the head of the White Walkers, who the Children of the Forest created, and then they touch each other, and then the Night King's like, I'm coming for you. And then all Bran says is hold the door. And then he puts that into Hodor's mind, and mind breaks Hodor in the past. And that's why Hodor's name is Hodor, because he's just saying hold the door, which means Hodor sacrifices himself to save Bran in the present, but has been like, there's a time loop. And it's the most heartbreaking scene in Game of Thrones, which is Hodor just saving Bran's life and fulfilling this prophecy. And Bran's like, oh shit, I broke someone to save me by accident. And
it's really like a big space-time continuum, weird sci-fi-ish thing when you find out why Hodor is named Hodor and keeps saying Hodor, and you're like, wait, this happened at the same time as the present, but it's affecting him in the past. It's kind of a mindfuck when they really go down and explain it like through the storytelling.
Yeah, there's actually a interview with George R. R. Martin from ages ago where someone's like, why is Hodor's name Hodor? And George R. R. Martin just says, you'll see. Which shows that he's planned this out from the beginning, because the name Hodor is such a strange name, and it's one of those things that he clearly planned from day one as one of these big moments that he's like, this is why this happens. And then Bran also in his visions has seen that Jon Snow, his brother, or he thinks his bastard brother, he's like, oh, this isn't my brother, he's actually my cousin, and his dad is Rhaegar Targaryen, his mom is my aunt, and he realizes Jon Snow's real name is Rhaegar? Or no, it's, is it Rhaegar Targaryen? Is Jon Snow's real name?
I forget. Like Rhaegar Jr., basically?
I think, yeah, it's Rhaegar Targaryen, which is like the Targaryen who came over to Westeros like thousands of years ago with a giant dragon to like conquer everybody. That's Jon's same name. So that's like his namesake. And Bran's namesake is the guy who built the wall 10,000 years ago. So there's like some parallels there with like famous historical figures. And now Bran is in Winterfell, and his sisters are like, you're really weird now, and you're a tree. And he's like, yeah, this is weird for all of us. Don't worry about it. So let's break down Sansa and Arya kind of together, because Sansa and Arya's stories are very different, but there's not as many details in their stories because there's a lot, unfortunately, that they kind of skip out on those two stories, but they're both very interesting. So let's break those down.
Okay. Where we last left off Sansa, she was she was pretty much supposed to be getting married to Joffrey, or King Joffrey at the time. Did they didn't actually get married?
No, she got married to Tyrion first, and then
Right.
somehow got unmarried to Tyrion.
Yeah. Okay, I was just making sure that I got my facts straight. So yeah, she was planning to get married to Joffrey, but this is when Marjorie Tyrell comes in, and kind of for like political reasons, for house like connection reasons, it's decided that Joffrey's going to marry Marjorie Tyrell to kind of strengthen the Lannister hold on the Seven Kingdoms, because the Tyrells have money and the Lannisters at the moment don't have any money just because they've been borrowing for their entire lineage. So Sansa is basically being emotionally and sometimes physically tortured by Joffrey at this point, after seeing her father's execution. She is told she's going to have to marry Tyrion Lannister. She doesn't want this. Tyrion doesn't want this because she's still a child.
And Tyrion's not a piece of shit.
Yeah, and Tyrion is definitely one of the best Lannisters, and that's not saying much.
Yeah.
At Joffrey and Marjorie Tyrell's wedding, Sansa and Tyrion are also there because everybody has to be there. It's the wedding. I think it's like the wedding reception. Someone poisons Joffrey. We find out who shortly after that happens. A gentleman gets Sansa out of King's Landing, like smuggles her out, basically through Littlefinger's help. She ends up going to the Vale.
Yeah, where her
where her aunt lives.
Yeah,
with Littlefinger. She goes through some more mental torture because her aunt is incredibly unstable and nuts, and tries to kill her because she thinks that Sansa and Littlefinger are a thing.
Yeah.
And Littlefinger kills her aunt, shoving her through the moon door.
Yeah.
Then Sansa basically gets sold off to the Boltons to be Ramsay Bolton, or at that time Ramsay Snow's wife, so that the Boltons can basically have a complete stronghold on the north.
Yeah.
Because Sansa is still kind of technically the heir to the north.
Yeah.
Or the wardeness of the north is what she should be. She goes through even more hell with the Boltons. Eventually she gets help getting out of Winterfell through Reek / Theon. And basically, I think how we wrap up to this point, Sansa is she gains control, or gains back control of Winterfell once the Boltons are defeated
by Jon and his wild
by Jon
army.
and the Battle of the Bastards, which rules that whole episode. And yeah, I guess we have to go with Arya's journey up to this point to kind of see where they interconnect, her and Sansa.
Yeah.
And Littlefinger.
And then, so Arya escapes King's Landing after her dad gets killed. She gets kind of sold into not like slavery, but she gets like, not like sold off, but like for her protection. So she's like on the road, and she meets up with Sandor Clegane, the Hound, who's been banished from the city by Joffrey because Joffrey's a little shit. And Arya's like, I know who you are. And the Hound is like, I hate you, I hate everyone, I hate my life, I'm an asshole. But he's not really an asshole. He protects her and teaches her kind of how to be a little badass. They make their way through the north. They run into someone named Brienne of Tarth, who their mom hired to protect the daughters. Brienne's like, hey, I know you. And then the Hound's like, I know you. And then there's like this disagreement with those two, and they're like, you can't have her. Oh, at the same time, all the Starks get killed at the Red Wedding, which is essentially a trap set up by the Boltons. And then that's like the most heartbreaking scene in season like 2 or 3, and everyone gets murdered, and you're like, oh my god. And Arya's there, and the Hound, you kind of that's where you first see him being a good guy, being like, we need to get you out of here. Like, I will protect you. And then Arya is up north. She's trying to get over this place called Essos, because she meets a guy named Jaqen Hagar, who is a man who has no like name. He is nobody, and he helps her escape. And Jaqen is like, here's a coin, just say like Valar Morghulis, which is like all men die or something like that in like their language. Or it's like it's something like that. It's like all men die.
Yeah, all men must die, and then the response like is Valar de Horus is like all men must serve.
Yeah, and it's like this coin, and he's like, if you see a boat going to Essos, give them this coin and say that word, and they will take you to me. And Jaqen Hagar is like, I am nobody, and like does this and changes faces, and Arya's like, man, that's pretty cool. I want to be able to do that.
I could use this to kill all my people on my list.
Yeah, and then she basically is with the Hound still. They're going north. They run to Brienne, and the Hound and Brienne sort of fight. Arya escapes because she's like, I need to do this other thing, and the Hound's like, wait, stop. And Brienne's like, wait, I need to like help your mom, or I promise your mom. And Arya's like, I don't believe you, so escapes over to Essos, becomes something called a Faceless Man, and they worship the Many-Faced God, which is essentially they worship the Grim Reaper. And then Arya is becoming this assassin who essentially takes when they kill them, they take their faces and magically wear them to become someone else. But she screws up and kills the wrong person on purpose. And then Jaqen Hagar, who is like nobody, is like, now you're blind. And then there's like this other girl who works at this temple who's a little piece of shit. And then they like get over it. Arya's like, I am the darkness, and kills this other girl who works at the temple. And then Jacques and Hagar's like, damn, you kind of passed this test in a roundabout way. And Arya escapes back to Westeros, goes back to Winterfell, and on the way kills a bunch of people on her list, notably the Freys, who killed her family. And it's a really cool scene where you're like, oh shit, they just did a face-off. And then now she's back in the north with her sister, and her sister's like, wow, you've changed. And she's like, yeah, you have too. And then they're both like, our brother's a carrot. And then they're like, yeah, this is weird. And then they meet up with Sam. So they're all convening there. Jon Snow's come back from the dead. And Sansa has met Jon. Arya hasn't seen Jon since episode 2 of the show. And that's about to happen in the next season. So those characters are all wrapped up in Winterfell. So that's where everyone is. There's a bunch of wildlings there. There's a battle. A bunch of people died. Ramsay Bolton got eaten by dogs thanks to Sansa. Really good comeuppance for somebody who's horrible. And
Littlefinger gets his comeuppance.
Yeah,
he's trying to set Sansa and Arya against each other.
Yeah, and they both realize, wait, you're responsible for all this bullshit that's happened in the entire show, which he is. He has literally caused every single problem in the entire show. So now let's work on Daenerys, and then do let's do Daenerys and then the Lannisters, and then we've hit all the major characters. Also, for anyone listening, and this doesn't make any sense to any of you, that's fine. We're doing this as a service to each other as well, so that on Sunday we're like, oh yeah, that's why this is happening. So,
right.
Daenerys.
So, where we last left off with Daenerys, she still has 3 baby dragons in her possession. Those 3 baby dragons very quickly start to grow and not become babies anymore. So she starts making her way in the east. She's in the east currently, or at that point, going from like city to city, trying to basically recruit as many people as followers as she can. Mm-hmm. She goes into a lot of cities that still have slavery as a legal means of labor. She decides that she is not about that life. She starts to free basically any city that has slaves, starting kind of majorly with, I forget the city name, but
Yunkai.
Yunkai with the Unsullied.
Yeah.
Yeah, she gets an army. She basically wins an army of super soldiers.
Yeah.
With the help of her kind of adolescent dragon, Drogon, that burns the kind of leader or the keeper of the Unsullied. So she's like, well, I got me an army of 8,000 awesome super soldiers. Time to move on to the next place. She goes from city to city, liberating people, kind of temporarily, almost because some of those cities do go back into chaos as she leaves and moves on to the next place.
Yeah.
But,
and then she ends up in Marine at the pyramid.
Yes, that's where she spends a good chunk of, like, season 4 and 5 is in Marine. And this is where I think she really develops what kind of ruler she wants to be through a lot of the trials and tribulations. There's kind of an uprising of people of former slave masters called the Sons of the Harpy that decide we don't like the new queen and her dragons. We're going to kill everybody in retaliation.
Yeah.
And so, Dany, she reluctantly reopens these fighting pits that used to be for slaves to fight each other. But she's like, I'm going to reopen this on one condition, that only free men can fight here. Yeah. Since you fucking weirdos like to watch each other slaughter each other. I get that it's part of your city tradition, whatever. So it gets to, and also she finds out that Jorah Mormont kind of betrayed her and was spying on her for King's Landing for a little bit. She finds out about this and she's like, you need to get the hell out of here. The only reason you're not dead right now is because you've been one of my most trusted advisors for so long. Yeah. And so she tells him to get the hell out. He makes his way back after running into Tyrion Lannister on the road, and he's like, I'm going to use you to win back Dany's favor. Kind of does, but also at the same time kind of doesn't. We'll get more into that when we talk about Tyrion. But basically, Dany's dragons become full grown. She uses those to kind of make her major move towards Westeros, and she makes some badass moves with this like caravan that's on the road that belongs to the Lannisters. She blows the shit out of that.
Yeah.
She blows up the shit out of that. I
Yeah.
don't want that to sound bad.
Yeah.
But basically, where we last leave off, she gets onto Dragonstone, meets up with Jon Snow. They hook up. They become interested in each other. She has not found out yet that she is Jon Snow's aunt and that he is the rightful ruler. That's going to be definitely a moment of contention between them.
Yeah.
That's like one of my most anticipated sort of like, hey, guess what moments.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where Dany is, and Dany's kind of like, some people think she's a bad guy. Her intentions are in the right place, but she also has now 2 dragons because one of them is a zombie dragon. But Oh yeah, she goes up and saves a bunch of people north of the wall, including Jon, and one of her dragons gets
whited.
Yeah, he gets whited. He gets repossessed by the Night King. Is like, I want a dragon. I want that dragon. And he's like, boom, zombie dragon, and burns down the wall because he's like, I want to go south. We don't know why yet, but he's on a mission. And the actor who plays the Night King is like, yeah, he's not truly evil, the Night King, and the White Walkers aren't evil. They want something. They have a goal, and they need this something, so they're willing to kill anything in their path, but they're not evil, so to speak. They're not like... It's kind of like in Lord of the Rings, I guess. Like, Sauron is evil, but he wants something. Like, he'll stop once he gets that thing. He just wants something, and is willing to, like, make armies to get this one thing. But in Game of Thrones, we don't know what that thing is yet.
Right.
And so let's hit up the Lannisters, and then we've hit up all the main characters. Oh, also there's a kind of like a country or city-state in the south called Dorne that they don't really talk about in the shows. And it's kind of totally thrown away. But we're going to hit up one of the characters who's Oberyn Martell, who gets his face squished like a grape. And it's one of the greatest scenes in Game of Thrones, and everyone freaked out. It's the best. Okay, so we're going to hit up all the Lannisters kind of at the same time. As we said, Joffrey's dead. Cersei's her mom. Cersei totally goes crazy, blows up all of King's Landing in a fit of rage. Tommen takes place of Joffrey as the king, and Tommen's actually a good kid, but when the entire city gets blown up by his crazy mom, he kills himself, and then Cersei completely goes off the rails because she's like, oh shit, I inadvertently made one of my kids kill himself. She has this guardian called the Mountain, who's the Hound, Sandor Clegane, who's watching Arya. His older brother, who is legitimately, the actor's name is Hafthor Bjornsson, who is the strongest person in the world. Like, he actually is.
Yeah, multi-champion, like, world's strongest man.
Yeah, he's like 7'7" and weighs like 400 pounds and is pure muscle. Like, this dude, if you don't know who we're talking about, look up Hafthor Bjornsson. This guy's a monster. And apparently he's like the world's sweetest guy. But yeah, he's like bigger than Andre the Giant. Like, this guy's a machine. So this is who she has as her bodyguard. And then when they think Tyrion killed Joffrey, even though they really don't think Tyrion killed Joffrey. But Cersei's always hated Tyrion. And she's like, Tyrion killed Joffrey. Even though, like, even their dad, who's Tywin, who's an asshole, is like, no, he didn't. But they're like, shit, we kind of have to do this thing. And so they do a trial by combat. So Cersei picks the Mountain as her, like, champion. And then Oberyn Martell, who's like, you clearly didn't kill Joffrey, but I'll fight for you. Oberyn Martell, who's like the best swordsman in the world, is like, I'll go fight this asshole because this asshole killed my sister and her kids, so I want this guy dead. And Oberyn Martell and the Mountain have the coolest fight ever, like this duel. And Oberyn essentially does kill the Mountain with poison. He poisons his spear, but then the Mountain is like, oh yeah, I'm a monster, and crushes his head like a grape in maybe the most unexpected death of all time on TV. And even when I saw that, and I knew that was coming from the books, I Owe You a Drink, I was like, oh my god. Oh my god. And it's pretty visceral. They do not shy away from that. And I wonder how they did the prosthetics for that, because that scene is just complete insanity. And then after that, Tyrion's like, oh fuck. Like, legit, like, I'm going to die. And then Tyrion escapes to Essos, meets up with Lord Friendzone, who is Jorah Mormont, who just got banished from Daenerys, and they're like, we're going to work together to get what we want. So they become like a buddy cop duo. They meet up with Daenerys again. Tyrion becomes Daenerys' like advisor and being like, hey, you have a bunch of good ideas, but you do not know how it works over there. I'm going to make sure you don't get murdered. Then that's when they end up in Westeros and with her dragons, and they start burning down Lannister stuff. Cersei, as we know, has gone crazy and has become like legitimately a tyrant.
Yep, everything Cersei does to try and further her grasp of rule on King's Landing pretty much leads to her own downfall.
Yeah.
But also she rises back up after blowing up everybody.
Yeah. And she's kind of in many ways the villain of the show since day one. She's really in a lot of ways, a huge villain. And kind of a sleeper villain. Like, you don't realize until later, like, oh my god, she's been pulling the strings the entire time. So she's doing that. She's completely gone crazy. That's kind of her story arc. She meets the dragons in Daenerys, which is a pretty cool moment where, like, I think for the first time she's truly scared is when she sees dragons. She's like, oh shit. Like, someone here has outdone me. And there's nothing I can do to stop a dragon the size of, like, a city block that's just sitting here, just watching me. And could legitimately destroy everything, literally everything ever, in about 8 seconds. So, that's where Cersei's at. Oh, and the Mountain is back from the dead, and he's like kind of like a zombie. He's like this undead monster who just is sort of her bodyguard. And then the last Lannister we're going to talk about is one of my favorite characters, Jaime. Take it away.
Where we last left off, Jaime, he had been... or he was just getting captured by... Get the fuck away, cat. Jesus. Sorry. Jaime had just been, or was just getting captured by the Starks during their kind of war with the Lannisters in King's Landing after Ned's beheading.
Yeah.
Catelyn Stark basically realizes that the only way she's ever going to get her daughters back from King's Landing, Sansa and Arya, is if she trades Jaime for them.
Mm-hmm.
So she enlists the help of Brienne of Tarth to escort Jaime Lannister back to King's Landing. During Jaime and Brienne's sort of journey there, they really bond. Mm-hmm. And they get a really like an awesome connection with each other, like a respect. And I would go far as to say like they love each other at this point. So Jaime does make it back to, or on the way, Jaime loses a hand because they get captured by a group of Bolton soldiers, and one of them was like, "Oh, you're the Kingslayer. Well, how good of a Kingslayer are you going to be without this fucking right hand of yours?" So he chops it off. Brienne does eventually escort Jaime back to King's Landing, where he reunites with Cersei, but he starts to see that she's kind of a monster, and not unlike their bastard son Joffrey. Basically, pretty much is where he gets his evilness from. Mm-hmm. From there, Jaime basically tells like Brienne, like, "Hey, you know, as a kind of a way of thanking Catelyn Stark, like, you need to go take care of the Stark girls, like, because, like, you know, you want to keep your word to Catelyn Stark to get them safe. Like, go find them, take care of them." Mm-hmm. Then Jaime gets enlisted by Cersei to go find their daughter, who is in Dorne
with the Martells.
Because she was not sold off, but she was kind of bargained off by Tyrion while he was still hand of the king. To treat or to get a political ally with the Martells. She was sent off to Dorne to marry Prince what's his face. What is his name? I just watched that episode. Whatever.
It's like the young kid.
Yeah, Trystane.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trystane Martell. He's the Prince of Dorne. He's eventually going to be the King of Dorne, or whatever position that is. Jaime goes to get his daughter back. gets into a bit of a fight with the Sand Snakes, which are
Oberyn's sister or Oberyn's daughters.
Yeah, Oberyn Martell's daughters. I've not read the books, but I've heard that the show did not do the Sand Snakes justice at all.
And there's 7 of them in the book.
Really?
Yeah, in the books there's 5 or 7 of them, and they're big characters. Also in Dorne, they're the only kingdom in Westeros that was never conquered by like the Targaryens, so that's why it's so different than everything else. They're the only ones that had an army that were able to stop dragons and stop all of that. So they're like a separate country, and that's why like marrying into them is important, because it's like, oh man, we're connecting the 2 countries. It's almost like north of the wall, but they're like cool with each other and there's trade, and Dorne is super rich. It's like Dorne has more money than all of Westeros and all the other houses combined. And they don't have a king. It's almost like more like a parliament. And so they're more of like a modern-y government, and they don't like believe in like the whole bastard thing. So that's why they have the last name of Sand instead of Snow if you're a bastard. But it's not looked down upon. It's how it is. And they're a lot more like liberal, and they're very anti the throne. And they're very like, they're anti the throne, but people in Westeros want people in Dorne to be like cool with them, because they're like, we see political gain here. But even though the Dornish are like, dude, stop, like, chill. And so that's a whole thing, and that's why when Jaime goes down there, it's kind of a big deal, because they don't exactly like Northerners down there. They're like, you guys are assholes and have tried to conquer us forever, and we've held you off. So yeah.
Okay, that's a very good explanation there. So anyway, Jaime does get his daughter. They start to head back, but we find out that Jaime's daughter, which his daughter doesn't realize that she is his daughter. Her whole life was raised to think that Jaime was her uncle, because who wants to release the awful news that your uncle is actually your dad, and your mom and her brother were banging and created 3 incestual children.
Yeah.
But anyway. Jaime's daughter is poisoned by a kiss from
Oberyn's lover.
Martell's lover. I can't remember her name, but she kisses Jaime's daughter out of revenge, kills her, poisons her. Jaime goes back to King's Landing pretty much empty-handed, because his whole mission was to get her back.
And now all 3 of his kids are dead.
Yeah, all 3 of his and Cersei's kids are dead. From there, I can't think of anything major that happens with.
After that, he gets back, and then like he realizes Cersei just blew up a city, and he's like, "You're crazy. I can't do this," and leaves to go to the north to be like, "There are White Walkers. There are zombies coming to kill us," and Cersei's like, "Nah, it's cool. I hired these Golden Company soldiers to come over." And he's like, that's not going to stop anything. He's like, there are legitimately ice zombies coming to murder us. I need to go see if I can do anything. And Cersei's like, cool, fuck you. And then Jaime is on his way north. And that's where we leave off. And that's kind of all the characters right now, essentially, except Cersei, are convening on Winterfell in the new episode Sunday. That's everyone's going to meet up in this one spot. And then Cersei's just being an asshole in King's Landing, and gonna like. So I think what's going to happen the new season is a bunch of stuff's going to happen in Winterfell for the first 3 episodes, and they're going to do the whole Night King thing, and then the second 3 episodes are Cersei. Like, I think they're going to. If I had to guess, that's why we haven't seen any of Cersei in the trailers. Really, we saw one like 10-second shot of her, and I think that's because she's really going to be the second half of the season. Like, they're going to defeat the Night King pretty early, I think.
That'll be an interesting take if they do go it that way. Everyone that's left alive is left to deal with, like, okay, now that existential crisis is over, now we have to deal with this awful person being in charge of, the 7 kingdoms. We need to figure out a way to get her out of there and then like change the system.
Yeah.
Or as Dany puts it, she's like, I don't want to stop the wheel. I want to destroy the wheel.
Yeah. So
and by wheel, she means like how things are governed in the Seven Kingdoms.
And I think that is how the show probably will end, is on like not like a political note, but less of a magical thing and more of an interpersonal thing.
Which I think is where Game of Thrones is at its best. When it does the character stuff. That's not to take away from like the badass episodes like Hard Home, Battle of the Bastards, like all these awesome battle and like just balls to the wall awesome episodes, but where this show is just at its absolute best is the character moments and the development and that part of the story. Yeah,
it's very similar to Lord of the Rings in that way, where there are super cool battles and there's a lot to love there, but the reason people fall in love with these stories is the people. Like, you fall in love with these characters and you feel for them. And yeah, the battles are like definitely like highlights and breaks from certain amount of tension, but then we want to see like how these characters are going to make it out of here. And like, yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I understand that a lot of people who have never seen Game of Thrones listen to that and they're like, what? It all made sense. That was a perfect recap of 80 hours of television in 55 minutes.
We did our best.
Yeah, we did our best with 80 hours. Like, you can do an entire podcast series on Game of Thrones and not touch all the pieces.
And people do. Like, there's a lot of good recap podcasts out there. And it's impossible to get every single nuance of every episode in there.
Oh, yeah.
So, everyone just does their best.
Yeah, and I think to close that off, I have this. There we go. Sorry. You're welcome. That was a recording of me doing it from a previous episode because I totally forgot how the theme song goes. But for all of you listening to this and maybe want to watch Game of Thrones or think it's interesting, seriously, give it a shot. It's a really good show. Get on board for the hype, even if you don't know much about it. It's going to be a fun, 6 weeks, to be a part of this and be a part of the fandom. So be part of it while it lasts. It's a big deal right now. And just have fun with it, even if you don't exactly know what everyone else is talking about. Most Game of Thrones fans who are cool and not complete assholes are going to be try to fill you in during the episode. Some people are like, bro, you're not even a fan? I'm not friends with you. Fuck those people. Just be cool, have fun. It's a good time. It's a wild show. And have fun with the hype because it's something that I think we can all get along on. And there's a lot of parallels to our world in that show, for better or worse. Thanks to President Joffrey or he's more President Cersei. He's definitely President Cersei.
A mix.
Yeah.
Because he's a fucking child.
He's a child, but he's also pure evil. So, thanks, President Lannister. He's President Tywin, is who he is. He is President Tywin. If you don't know what we're talking about, okay.
Wake the fuck up.
Yeah, do you know CNN? But yeah. So, that was our talk on Game of Thrones. And so, Ben, is that your recommendation for the week?
Yeah. We're looking forward to getting this thing going again. With season 8, the final season. We hope everyone listening is, if you're still listening at this point in the podcast, you're on board, we're guessing. So yeah. We hope that we'll catch you next week, that we can all talk about it together.
Yes, we will.
And each week up until the final week. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. I'm signing off. That's also my thing. Ben, close us out.
As always, I say, thanks everybody for tuning in with us this week. Like I just said, we hope to catch you next week with some hot piping Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 1 action. Join us here for that. We're going to go in depth with this shit. I'm Ben. This has been See What Sticks, a podcast about everything and nothing. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good week.
Thank you.